Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about Orientalism and its critics. Let me first start by defining what is Orient. Orient is an European invention, a place of romance, exotic beings, haunted memories and landscapes. It is the richest and the oldest colonies of the Europe and the most vivid picture of the order that aided European to define itself. What is Orientalism? Orientalism is a thought that has its roots from ontological and epistemological distinction made between the Orient on one hand and the Occident on the other. It is an acceptance of distinction between East and West, and it is a domination process that comes with having authority and restricting on the Orient. So who are the Orientalists? These are the people who teaches, writes and research about the Orient. They might be sociologists, anthropologists and philologists and so on. Basically the one who does Orientalism. How does Said analyzes this issue? By using the Foucault's notion of discourse, which is the signs and entity of sequences that are announcements or statements in the conversation. There are different approaches to the Orient. First, we have British and French Orientalism that has started in 19th century and continued until the end of the Second World War. Then, from that point, we have American Orientalism that is still continuing today. So, what is Said is looking for? Said is looking for historical generalizations. He looks for the power relationship that led all the generalization possible, as it is seen in the portrait of Oriental woman in Flaubert's Voyage in Orient. Said also underlines that this issue can be explained by Gramsci's hegemony. There is the cultural leadership or hegemony that nurtures Orientalism and strengthens it. Of course, which in turn creates inferior and superior relationship. Said's contemporary reality. First, there is a distinction between pure and political knowledge. There are areas that are supported more due to being in the interest of the governments. There is the binary between the areas of humanists engage and work that has policy implications. In the latter, there is a material interest, and this makes it such as the areas of economic, politics and sociology as being political. Even in the human sciences, a Western author puts her identity as European first, then as an individual second. There are of course the methodological aspects of the Said's contemporary reality. Said says it's a very diverse area, so he should pick from some place to start, and it became he started with British, French and American Orientalism. The reason of this, their experience of Arabs and Islam, which is almost 1,000 years old. There are many critics for Said's Orientalism. First of all, from Porcheskas and Berg's piece, they focus on the pieces that has been done before Said's book. For the British account, there were criticisms in 1950s and 60s of the British rule, but stressed denunciations of imperialism, a system linked to capitalism. In 1960s, the impacts of Vietnam War in the US and UK gave rise to the movements of social change as a result of development of civil rights movements. To exemplify these works, Thales's anthropology and colonial encounter engage in historical context of the issue. Brian Turner's Marx and the End of Orientalism, again the same here with Orientalism of Said, samely focused on the issues that Said examined without using the word of discourse. For the French side, we see a much more concrete, all-encompassing critique, because there were already developed vocabulary, political vocabulary for this, because of the anti-Nazi resistance, and also there was instability in the Fourth Republic, and the Cold War atmosphere and the Soviet support for the nationalism in the third world country formed the critique. I have a critique for this issue too. If we take Said's account, although it has a revolutionary impact, there are like many more works, as I have mentioned, both from the French and the British colonial rule, and also their own criticism to themselves. And also, if we take the size account of creating Oriental and like also defining East and West, there are points, there are like clashes that we see. For example, if we take Turkish people and like cities like Istanbul, we cannot say it is from the Middle East, but on the other hand, we cannot also say that they are from Europe. By the same token, we can also exemplify, give example like Cyprus, because like even though Turkish Cypriots are part of the Muslim world, they have the European citizenship. So therefore, there is a identity problem to identify themselves, and like Said's basic Oriental and Occidental identification does not completely describe these people's identity.
Connected to Mustafa's points, we see that Warisco criticizes Said of using the same West and East binary. So in the sense that he generalizes the West, he generalizes the Orient, what he calls the Orient, and also he generalizes the Orientalists who worked or who studied or who depicted the area before. And also, as Warisco criticizes, Said sometimes benefited or based his arguments on the terms such as hegemony or discourse, yet he finds the basis for these arguments quite weak. Actually, Said was not the only one who criticizes colonialism. So what he did is to have a limited approach, that he selected some texts that fits with his arguments, but as Warisco says, he left out many, including Mark Twain or Voltaire, and especially Voltaire's Candide, where things end positively for the Turk. And also, like, yeah, in general, we see Warisco provides an epistemological analysis of Said. In this sense, what I think, both Said and Warisco does not provide us the essence of the problem. So, for example, Warisco mentioned when the French invaded Egypt, they created their own version of the history of Egypt. Yet they had no voice for the Egyptians for themselves. So that's how Said encourages, let the man speak for himself. The history of Egypt, even though the Ottomans ruled Egypt for centuries, basically, was not researched, was not inquired by the Ottomans, so that there are the pyramids in Egypt, and the Ottomans did not make a study on the pyramids. And both in this sense, Said has this painting on the cover of his book, which Warisco answered with another painting, simply an Orientalist depicting the Orient better than the Said's version. In this sense, we can refer to the paintings that have been done on the Eastern harem. But both Warisco's and Said's approach doesn't explain the fact that we learn about, for example, the Ottoman harem from the Venetian accounts, actually, so that the Ottomans themselves did not have enough records or evidence or research or studies about what's going on in the harem, but yeah, rather they kept it as a secret. How we perceive harem, or how we know that the perceptions by the Orientalists are not so accurate, is thanks to the Venetian accounts, the Venetian ambassadors' accounts. When we go back to the Egypt and France issue, there may not be enough voice from the Egyptians themselves to stand against the French, because like the material that is written at that point was not enough to create a voice for the Orient, and that's our main problem. So, for example, we both study social sciences, but in my country, I don't know why it is, but in my country, when you think of social sciences and when you talk to the people about it, they look these kind of studies as something of aid to unemployment. So nobody actually values to obtain knowledge about the society, history, or whatever. So it's a common understanding that has roots in history. Like, as it was before, the Ottomans did not wonder about what's happening with the pyramids. Now, still in our societies, people do not wonder about what's happening in the history other than the parts that they're interested, like heroism and war. So what Warisco does is a good critique and good analysis in intellectual terms of Said's text. But there are many studies about Said's text in intellectual sense. I don't know, like everyone just grabs the text from a different perspective. They analyze it in a Marxist way, in a Foucauldian way, in a Gramscian way. But these are all intellectual debates, and there are adequate number of debates already on the issue. So Warisco gathers them all, but likewise the other debates on the issue, they remain intellectual, so that they don't touch the essence, the practice behind these debates, or behind this text, or behind the Orientalist discourse that actually helped the creation of it.